In the hush of early dawn, before the temple bell has even stirred the birds, a young monk approached his teacher. His eyes were restless, his robes still stiff with the starch of newness. He bowed low, the way tradition demands, but his voice betrayed hesitation. "Master," he asked, "when will I feel ready to meditate every day?" The old monk, whose beard had turned the color of snowfall and whose breath moved with the seasons, didn't speak at first. He simply looked at the boy, the way mountains look at clouds, patiently. Then softly he said, "When you no longer ask if you're ready, sit anyway." The young monk didn't understand it that morning, but the years would carve those words into his spine. We wait too long to begin. We wait for silence, for clarity, for motivation, for the perfect playlist or the ideal moment when the stars align and we feel inspired. But here's the ancient truth. The first step is not sacred. It is not supposed to feel divine. It is not the choir of angels descending upon your to-do list. It's just the first step. It's you putting one foot forward while your mind screams for comfort. It's sweeping the floor before dawn. It's opening the journal when the page feels empty. It's stretching while your bones argue. It is boring. It is plain. It is human. And it is necessary. There is a story told in the southern temples of a man who waited 30 years to begin a pilgrimage because he believed he had to be spiritually prepared. He read all the scriptures. He consulted every guru. He performed every rite. Finally, at age 70, he tied his walking staff and began the long journey up the mountain. He collapsed halfway, his body too old, his knees unwilling. Had he begun when he was ready enough, he might have reached the top long before the candles of his life flickered, but he had mistaken preparation for progress. The wise do not wait for readiness. They walk while unsure. You don't need motivation to begin. You need discipline to force the motion before the emotion arrives. Discipline is not the enemy of creativity. It is its chariot. It is the rhythm beneath the freedom. It is the daily returning to the work that feels stale, until one day it isn't. Imagine a farmer who only plants when he feels inspired. His soil will be soft, his crops barren. But the one who wakes each day, rain or shine, pressing seed into dirt, doesn't need inspiration. He has harvest. The wise old monk once told a disciple, "Waiting for perfect timing is the way of the distracted. The bamboo does not wait for the rain to begin growing. It begins, and the rain catches up." Let that sink in. The bamboo doesn't make excuses. It doesn't consult the forecast. It begins, quietly, daily, persistently, and so must you. In the way of the warrior, the blade is sharpened each morning, not because a battle is guaranteed, but because a dull blade is a sign of a lazy hand. In the way of the artist, the brush is lifted even when the mind feels blank, because creation respects consistency. And in the way of the monk, the bell rings at the same hour, not because it is always beautiful, but because discipline is its own form of prayer. There was a time when even the old monk struggled. He too had days where the cushion felt cold and the silence heavy. Days when the temptation to delay meditation was loud. But do you know what he did? He sat anyway. Not because he wanted to, not because he believed in that moment, but because he had made a vow to the self he hoped to become, a vow to his inner mountain. That is what consistency is, not a mood, not a trend, not a grind. It is a quiet promise you make to your future self, and honor with every small act. Think of the first step as lighting a candle in the fog. You won't see the path, but you will see the ground just ahead. And that is enough. One page becomes a chapter. One walk becomes a habit. One breath becomes a sitting practice. But none of it begins until you begin. There is magic in the mundane, but only after repetition. The first time you sweep the floor, it's just sweeping. The 50th time, it's meditation. The 500th, it's liberation. Why? Because your spirit meets the motion and merges with it. The sacred comes not from feeling ready, but from being willing to act before readiness arrives. The young monk returned to his master a year later. He had meditated every morning, whether he felt like it or not. This time, he did not ask questions. He simply bowed. The master smiled and said, "Now you are beginning." In the quiet shadows of the monastery, just before the golden kiss of sunrise touched the temple walls, a line of novices would gather with worn-out straw brooms. The floor didn't always look dirty. In fact, most days it sparkled. But every single morning, without fail, they swept. One outsider once asked, "Why do you sweep when there is no dust?" A monk, older than the columns and twice as silent, replied, "Because sweeping sweeps the mind, and dust always returns, just like thought, just like doubt." This is the wisdom of ritual, the ordinary act done extraordinarily often, not to impress, not to be seen, but to stay centered. We live in a world obsessed with motivation. We chase viral quotes, hype music, that perfect podcast that will jolt us out of laziness. But motivation is flimsy. It's like a butterfly, beautiful, but it doesn't stay. Ritual, however, is a root. It holds you steady when storms come. It doesn't ask how you feel. It reminds you who you are. There's a teaching in the northern mountains, a story of a monk who brewed tea every day for 50 years. Same hour, same cup, same silence. A visitor once asked him, "Do you not grow tired of tea?" The monk replied, "I do not drink the tea for taste. I drink it to remind myself, I am here, I am alive, and life, like tea, must be steeped slowly with attention." This is ritual, not performance, not discipline wrapped in punishment, but the transformation of a small, repeatable act into something sacred. Let us be clear. Motivation is a guest. Ritual is a roommate. Motivation knocks once, maybe twice. Ritual is the one who opens the curtains every morning, even when you don't want to get out of bed. You must learn to stop chasing motivation like a dog chasing a passing cart. Instead, build rituals. Simple, small, sturdy. The monk who sweeps is not cleaning the floor. He is cleaning the fog from his spirit. And when he does it, sick, tired, heartbroken, or cold, it matters more, not less. One monk, known for never missing a sweep, even said, "I've never skipped a day, even when I had fever, because that's the day my mind needed sweeping most." That's not just consistency. That's devotion. Do not underestimate the power of what may seem small. Lighting incense, writing one sentence, stretching for 5 minutes, watering the same plant, whispering the same prayer, preparing the same tea. These are not insignificant acts. They are anchors. They remind you that you are not drifting. They give shape to your days. They create rhythm, and rhythm is the heartbeat of progress. The elder monk once gathered a group of restless students. Each complained of losing motivation. One said, "Master, some days I feel unstoppable, but most days I feel nothing." The master smiled and poured water into a cracked bowl. "Do you see this bowl?" he asked. It leaks, yes. But if I pour water in it every day, the ground beneath becomes a garden. He looked each of them in the eye. Your motivation may leak, but if you keep pouring, your life will bloom. That is the quiet, relentless power of ritual. People often believe they need something grand, a new gym, a new journal, a new moon. But sacredness isn't in the tool. It's in the intention. The brush doesn't make the artist. The temple doesn't make the monk. The candle doesn't make the prayer. The ritual makes them sacred. When you tie your shoelaces before a run, do it slowly, mindfully. When you write your daily plan, do it with breath and clarity. When you take your first sip of water in the morning, honor it like the world's first rain. This is how consistency becomes not a prison, but a path. There is a trap in modern life, thinking only new things can be sacred, but the monks know better. They polish the same statues, chant the same verses, walk the same path, sweep the same floor, and every time they do it like it's the first time. Because repetition with reverence transforms boredom into beauty. The wise teacher says, if you prepare the tea every day, your soul begins to know the scent of progress. It won't always be loud, but it will always be there. That's what ritual gives you. Progress that hums instead of shouts. Progress that happens slowly, like a sunrise that doesn't rush but still lights everything. You must stop chasing the fire. Instead, light a candle every day, even on the gray days, especially on the gray days, and soon you'll look around and realize you are surrounded by light, not because of one massive flame, but because of the hundreds of small ones you lit when no one was watching. The goal is not to make life exciting. The goal is to make life sacred. And the secret is this: sacred things are not loud. They are repeated. They are protected. They are honored. So find your broom, find your tea, find your brushstroke, your page, your practice, and return to it again and again and again. In the back halls of an old Zen monastery, a young student hunched over parchment and brush. For the 100th morning in a row, he practiced the same stroke, circle after circle, line after line. His hands were cramping, his eyes burned, and then, in a sudden wave of frustration, he flung the ink across the scroll. Black rain splattered across the wood. The old master, standing behind him, didn't flinch. He simply said, "The ink is angry, not you. You are the hand that guides it. Guide again tomorrow." That student would go on to write with such elegance, his calligraphy was said to calm storms. But only 20 years later, discomfort is not a wall, it is a door. And pain is not punishment, it is the key. We resist pain. We flinch at effort. We retreat from what burns. But what we fail to understand is that the pain is not the problem. Our refusal to stay with it is. Every strong tree grew through storms. Every sharp blade was beaten by fire. Every wise monk once sat in silence so loud it shattered his illusions. There's a lesson the old monks share in whispers. Discomfort is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of your transformation. The first time you sit for meditation, your knees ache. The second time, your mind screams. The third time, boredom claws your skin. But if you return, if you sit through the fire, it ceases to burn. Not because the pain disappears, but because you've built a container strong enough to hold it. A student once asked a monk, "Why must we do what hurts?" The monk placed a stone on his back and walked across the courtyard. Then he placed the same stone on the boy's shoulders and said, "The burden does not shrink, but your back will grow stronger. Discipline is not the removal of pain. It is the agreement to move with it. When your legs ache, walk anyway. When your heart races, breathe deeper. When your spirit whines, whisper once more." That is the monk's mantra, not a shout, not a scream, just a steady, quiet defiance of weakness. Pain is the chisel. Discipline is the sculpture. And you, dear soul, are the marble waiting to become more. The chisel may be cold. The strike may sting. But with each cut, what is not you falls away. Your laziness, your excuses, your doubt, shaved off by repetition, until what remains is art. There's a story from the Eastern pagodas about a boy who trained to carry water up 1,000 steps every morning. The jars would cut his hands. His knees would bleed. He hated every climb, but he never stopped. Years later, when the village was struck by drought, he was the only one strong enough to carry water for everyone. What once caused him pain had prepared him. Discipline had forged purpose. So if today feels heavy, carry it. If your fingers tremble, keep writing. If your voice cracks, speak anyway. Because the weight you carry today will become the wings you use tomorrow. The old monk says, when the body aches, continue. When the spirit whines, whisper once more. Pain is the chisel. Discipline is the sculpture. He tells this not as philosophy, but as memory. He remembers sitting for hours in the cold, back straight, breath sharp, tears silent. He remembers burning rice as a novice and eating every grain in shame. He remembers failing to sweep one morning and watching the elder walk barefoot across a floor of dust, never saying a word, just letting consequence speak. And still he returned, again and again and again. Because this is what the world doesn't tell you. You don't get strong by avoiding pain. You get strong by meeting it like an old friend, by saying, "Ah, there you are. Let's begin." Discipline is not about how you feel. It's about what you do when you don't feel anything at all. It's waking up tired but rising anyway. It's writing when the words feel dry. It's practicing even when no progress is seen, and that's the magic. The unseen progress, the internal shifts, the quiet victories, the unsexy moments where no one claps, but your soul becomes a little braver. Think of the sculptor. He doesn't see the statue on day one, but he chisels anyway. He doesn't curse the stone for being rough. He just keeps striking, and in time, shape emerges, then form, then beauty, but only after thousands of blows. You, too, are being sculpted. Every act of showing up, another strike. Every moment of pain endured with grace, another corner smoothed. Every time you whisper, once more, another step toward the masterpiece you're becoming. The monk's voice is calm when he says, "Pain will come." It is the toll for the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. Do not resist the toll. Pay it with sweat. Pay it with tears. Pay it with one more breath, one more page, one more rep, and walk across. A monk once planted a garden. The soil was dry. The seeds were small. The land was empty. And for 7 years, nothing grew. Each morning, he walked to that patch of earth. He bowed, he watered, he whispered a prayer to the wind, then he walked away. Visitors chuckled. Some mocked. Others asked, "Why water what refuses to bloom?" He only smiled and replied, "Because I promised it water. That's enough." In the 8th year, a single flower opened, a rare bloom, vibrant and wild. The same ones who laughed returned in awe. But the monk? He simply kept watering, not for the flower, but for the promise. This is the lesson. Consistency is not a performance. It is a private promise. In a world desperate for claps and likes, for hearts and shares, the greatest acts happen unseen. Not when the lights are on, but when the room is dark, when no one's clapping, when there is only you and your vow. There's a saying passed between old monks. If you light the incense only when guests arrive, it is not a ritual, it is a performance. How often do we act only when eyes are on us? How many gym memberships begin with selfies and end with silence? How many spiritual seekers chant for Instagram but not for insight? True growth doesn't demand witnesses. It demands devotion in the quiet. A young novice once asked an elder monk, "Master, how will I know when I've become disciplined?" The monk poured tea slowly and said, "When you sweep the floor knowing it will be dirty again. When you chant the prayer knowing no one will hear it. When you serve, not for thanks, but because it is needed. Then, perhaps, you are close." This is the power of the unseen ritual. Do not confuse attention with value. The world may overlook your effort. It may never applaud your quiet nights of writing, your early mornings of sweat, your whispered affirmations, your meals cooked in love, your journal pages no one will ever read. But those moments shape you the most. They are not for show. They are for your soul. Discipline practiced in silence becomes character engraved in stone. You don't become who you are when people see you. You become who you are when you act as if someone always does. But that someone is not outside you. That someone is your highest self, watching and waiting. The elder monk says, "Do not perform your rituals for praise. Do them because the act itself is the praise. You are seen by the silence, and silence never forgets." It's not poetic fluff. It's truth forged in years of waking before the sun, bowing to the cold, and walking barefoot to a temple that never claps. Here's the paradox. The more you seek recognition, the weaker your resolve becomes. But the more you act without need for reward, the stronger you get. Why? Because now you are powered not by validation, but by value. And value does not vanish when no one's watching. There is a bamboo grove behind an ancient monastery. The monks say it took 5 years of watering before the first green shoot appeared. Then in the 6th year, the bamboo shot up 80 feet in 6 weeks. Did it grow in 6 weeks? It grew for 6 years beneath the soil in secret, while the world called it a failure. Such is the way of those who commit to silent consistency. Your efforts may feel invisible, your progress may feel slow, but if the roots are growing, trust them. You are building something unshakable. So, how do you keep going when there's no praise, when there are no cheers, no views, no feedback? The old monk says, make your vow the applause. Let the act itself be the reward. You promised yourself you'd show up, so show up, not because it's seen, but because it's sacred. Imagine this. A man lifts weights in a dark room. No mirrors, no music, no camera, just the steel, the strain, the breath. And when the lights come on 5 years later, he hasn't just changed his body, he's changed his spirit. That's what discipline in the dark creates. You don't need more followers. You need more follow-through. You don't need a stage. You need a practice. Another story from the temple. A bell ringer was tasked to ring the morning gong for 40 years. One winter, he fell ill but still dragged himself to the rope. Someone asked, "Why not rest?" "No one will mind." He replied, Perhaps not, but the silence would. The bell is not for them. It's for the day itself, to know I am still here. And so he rang, even in pain, even in darkness, even when unseen. That is what builds unbreakable consistency. We must stop asking, who will notice, and start asking, what do I become by doing this every day? Because in the end, you are not remembered for what you did in front of others. You are remembered by who you became when no one clapped. And if no one remembers, so what? You will, and that is enough. In the quiet temple courtyard, a young novice once watched water drip from the roof onto a stone below. Drip, drip, drip. He returned the next day, and the stone had a shallow groove. A year passed. The groove was deeper, 5 years, 10, 20. Now the stone had split, not from any mighty blow, but from the soft touch of water, falling gently every single day. He asked the old monk, "How can water so soft break stone?" The master smiled. "Because the river does not rush. It remembers, and it returns." Repetition is stronger than force. The world teaches us to hustle hard, to sprint, to burn fast. But in the monastery, we are taught something far more powerful. Do not strike the stone once and expect it to open. Instead, return again and again. Let your presence be the pressure. This is not flashy. It will not go viral, but it will change your life. A young student once asked, "Master, how did you memorize the 10,000 sacred chants?" The master did not pause. "One per day," he said, "for 10,000 days." There was no shortcut, no app, no crash course. Just one chant every sunrise for 10,000 sunrises. This is how legacies are built. Not by dramatic effort, but by devoted effort. The problem is not that we're weak. The problem is that we're addicted to immediacy. We want the mountain moved today. But the wise know, mountains bow not to the strong, but to the steady. You want to write a book? 1 page a day, every day. You want to master your body? 1 workout, every day. You want peace? 1 mindful breath, every day. Let the repetition carry the weight, because effort doesn't change your life. Repeated effort does. There's a tale in the old scrolls of a monk who practiced sword forms alone at dawn, every morning, in rain, in snow, for 30 years. He never fought, never boasted, never wavered. When invaders came, the villagers asked, "Will you protect us?" He stepped forward, calm as still water, and said, "I've been ready for 30 winters. I've carved readiness with my morning breath." He stopped the battle with a single stance. That is the power of daily discipline. Consistency does not require you to be powerful. It requires you to show up, especially when you don't feel powerful. The river doesn't wonder if it's strong today. It just flows. Be like that. The old monk sits beneath the Bodhi tree and says, "Do not confuse the lightning bolt with the sunrise. One strikes once and disappears. The other returns every morning and lights the whole world." We are taught to chase lightning, but we were built to rise like the sun. It's easy to start with fire, but will you stay when the fire cools? Will you rise when no one cheers? Will you return when progress is invisible? This is where true strength is born, not in the first sprint, but the 1,000th step. A monk once set out to master the art of brush painting. Each day he painted a single line, just one, no more, for 5 years. Visitors scoffed. "Why not paint full scrolls?" He smiled. "Because I am not painting lines. I am building hands that never tremble." 5 years later, he painted a dragon in 1 breath. and kings hung his scrolls in their halls. Because each line had 5 years of repetition in its bones, your habits are not small. They are sacred touches of transformation. They shape you the way water shapes stone, but not if you only try once, or once a week, or when it feels good. The stone does not move for moods, and neither will your life. You want change? Then be patient. Be repetitive. Be boring, if that's what it takes. There is no greatness without grind. There is no mastery without monotony. The monk in the temple does not complain, "I've swept this floor before." He bows to the broom because he knows. The point was never the clean floor, it was the clean mind, carved by repetition. The old monk offers a bowl of rice and says, "Eat slowly. You've eaten before, but you'll eat again. That's the beauty. Repetition isn't failure, it's food. Even the breath repeats, inhale, exhale, forever. The trees repeat, the moon repeats. Everything alive is made of rhythm. So why should your transformation be anything else?" A novice said, "Master, I'm tired of starting over." The elder replied, "Then stop stopping. Understand this truth, the river does not stop when it feels tired. It does not ask if it's enough. It just continues, and one day a canyon stands in its wake. So, start small. Repeat often, forgive yourself when you falter, but return. Don't measure the flood. Honor the drops, because one drop another equals the river. And the river, it carves through everything.